I'm Assistant Sheriff Brett Zimmerman, and I'm going to brief you on the additional details as we know them today on the officer-involved shooting that occurred on Wednesday, January 15, 2020 at 9:11 a.m. LVMPD dispatch received several calls from citizens reporting a shooting inside a credit union located at the 6900 block of Spring Mountain Road. Call takers were advised that a black male adult, later identified as a William Jackson. He's a 32-year-old black male adult. He's 5'8", 190 pounds. William Jackson had shot a female several times inside of the bank. The female was Jackson's mother, who he had forced to go to the credit union to withdraw money to give her. First here is a video from the bank. So the subject and his mother enter the bank, whom he kidnapped from her residence earlier in the morning at about 6 a.m. They arrived at that credit union when the bank opened up, or when the credit union opened up, and he had forced her to go to the bank with him with a gun to withdraw money to give her. While inside the bank, after the withdrawal was made, she attempted to escape from him and go into one of those offices that have sliding glass doors and lock the door, which she was able to do. He then fired the first round through the glass, and he struck her. As you saw from the video, after the first round was fired, patrons and employees exited the bank. He took his time methodically. He went back into the room again and shot her 2 more times. And at that point, he removed the money that she withdrew from the account and left the bank. And that was at the time that 2 brave persons who were inside the bank followed him from a distance and were able to give our officers or our dispatchers a good description so our officers could locate him, because he had removed the orange vest after he left the bank. After the shooting, Jackson exited the bank and began walking away from the scene. 2 citizens observed Jackson exit the bank holding a handgun. They called 911 and followed him to a parking lot located at 6950 Western Desert Inn Road.
Straight back. I think that's him in the hoodie. He's got something orange in his pocket, all the way to behind the building. Get somebody on Rosanna in case he jumps his fence.
Confirming he's wearing a black hoodie? Not confirmed. He did have an orange vest and he stuffed it in his pocket.
Stop!
He's wearing...
Shots fired!
Direction of travel when you can. 660, shot fired. 660.
Tack reload.
Go on, channel.
He's going over the fence. Oh, shit.
He's running.
He just went over the wall, back towards Rainbow.
Air 2, you copy. Air 2, where are they? DI in Spring Mountain.
To Robert 1, I lost him at that wall. He did shoot at me.
He's behind the building, behind the Southern Nevada Center. Officer's got him at gunpoint there.
Next.
There, real quickly, from the body-worn camera video, we were able to get a still shot of what the officer saw as he was arriving before he fired those shots through his windshield. Officer Simmons arrived at that location in a marked patrol vehicle. As Officer Simmons was driving through that parking lot, Jackson pointed his handgun towards him. Officer Simmons fired 3 rounds through his patrol car front windshield, at that time missing Jackson. Jackson began running and fired 2 rounds at Officer Simmons, who had exited the patrol vehicle. Officer Simmons returned fire, discharging 2 more rounds, missing Jackson again. Jackson continued to run until he reached a parking lot located at 3225 South Rainbow, where he hid behind a parked car near a dumpster enclosure. Officers surrounded Jackson and treated him as a barricaded armed subject. SWAT and crisis negotiators responded to the scene and began communicating with Jackson. Jackson eventually surrendered and was taken into custody without further incident. Jackson was transported to CCDC, where he was booked for the aforementioned charges. Jackson's weapon was a Glock 19, 9mm, and the investigation revealed he fired 5 rounds total during this entire incident at different crime scenes. Jackson's criminal history is he has a battery domestic violence in Nevada in 2008. Jackson's charges are extensive. He had attempt murder with a deadly weapon, 5 counts. He had a kidnap with a deadly weapon, elderly person. Battery with a deadly weapon, 3 counts, elderly person. Robbery with a deadly weapon, elderly person. Assault with a deadly weapon, elderly person. Assault with a deadly weapon on a police officer. Discharge of a firearm in an occupied structure, 3 counts. Burglary with a firearm, 2 counts. Carrying a concealed weapon. And battery domestic violence, a second offense on an elderly person. Our involved officer is Officer Michael Simmons, which is spelled Michael Simmons. He's 51 years old, and he's been with LVMPD since July of 2000. In this incident, Officer Simmons was armed with a Glock 22C, 40 caliber handgun. The investigation revealed that he fired 5 rounds during this incident. Officer Simmons is assigned to the Community Policing Division at the Spring Valley area. I'll open it up if anybody has any questions. Yes, ma'am. We received word this morning that she's stable. She received 3 gunshot wounds. I believe 1 to the abdomen, 1 to the thigh, and 1 to the arm, shoulder area.
Understanding that he kidnapped his mother from her home, or did she go not?
No, he did. He did kidnap that. He did kidnap her. He brought her to that bank against her will. He arrived at her house at 6 a.m. and he had her there, and she was prohibited to go to her work that day and was forced to go to the bank with him.
And then I know it's preliminary, but I'm watching the camera video of the shooting. It looks like he confronts him. The man is brandishing a weapon. Do you know who shot first or any of those?
In regards to the officer,
Yeah.
the officer had already had the information at the bank that he had shot somebody. The initial information too on a scene like that, we didn't know if it was a teller until officers get to the bank. They realize there's somebody shot inside of a bank. And then when he arrived, he saw that visual through his body-worn camera. He sees that individual crouching, holding the weapon. The officer's first reaction was to shoot at that suspect, so he was able to exit his vehicle. He shoots through the windshield right there, so he's able to, go on the offense against the suspect, so the suspect doesn't shoot at him because he had already saw him pointing the weapon. Then, of course, after he shot those first 3 rounds, the suspect then was able to return 2 rounds of fire against him. Then our officer returned 2 rounds after that from outside of the vehicle.
The weapon that the suspect possessed, was it legally owned?
We are looking into that weapon. Right now we have a trace out on it to see where it was purchased, but in interviewing the suspect, he didn't give us much information and requested a lawyer.
And how typical is training where you shoot through your windshield at a suspect?
We're not trained to do that, but our policy states that as a last resort, you'll shoot from your moving vehicle or shoot through the windshield, but under that circumstance, we've had it done before, but if an officer feels that threat and feels someone's gonna shoot him, you don't have time to get out of your vehicle, you gotta do what you gotta do. Thank you all.